Hello, everybody, and welcome. Happy Thursday to you. And I hope you're having an awesome day. And today we are going to talk about a really important topic. I absolutely love this topic. It happens to be one of my favorite things to talk about as well. So I want to talk or introduce you to Stacey Brown Randall. All right. Hey, Stacey, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing awesome. Really happy to have you here with me today because we are going to talk about building a referable business. All right. And this is definitely Stacey's area of genius. And so I'm super excited to share her with you. Stacey and I chatted, I don't know, a couple months ago, I think.
Mhm.
And and actually, I read her book. So we'll tell you a little bit about her book as well. And I thought, what a great opportunity to share some of her wisdom with you all. Because let's be honest, when we're in a service-based business like we all are, referrals can really help out, right? It can be so incredibly helpful. So before we jump in, let me just give you an overview of what we're going to cover today. All right. So we are going to cover really the best way to receive referrals and specifically how to generate referrals naturally without manipulation, incentivizing, or even asking, which is pretty amazing. So, love that. So, I can't wait to share, have this conversation so that you all can have, walk away with some brand new strategies to implement in your business. So, specifically, we're going to be talking to Stacey about how to build a proven, sustainable referral system that you can implement year after year. We're going to tap into the four types of referral sources. So we're going to define that and tell you, how to leverage and tap into those. We'll talk about how to simplify your referral model in order to save time and money. Plus, feel great about honoring your most important client relationships, and of course, much more. So, welcome to everyone. If you're just joining us, again, we are talking with Stacey Brown Randall, and we're talking all things referrals. Hopefully, we're going to make your lives a lot easier after today's session, a lot easier and make your business more effective, right? Really add to that bottom line. And for those of you that don't know me, welcome again. My name is Lesli Bitel, business mentor and coach for private practice professionals. All right. So a lot of referring going on in that business sector. So again, I'm super excited to share these proven strategies with you and get some insight from our referral expert here. So with that all being said, I would love to get, why don't you share a little bit about your story? How did you end up, Stacey, how did you end up honing in so deeply into the specific area of referrals?
Yeah, I really wish I could tell you that I woke up one day and God was like, "You're now going to be brilliant when it comes to referrals and you're going to do it different and you're going to be contrarian and it's going to be awesome." That is so not how it happened. It truly was the school of hard knocks. I actually had a first business fail, and it was like paying attention to okay, that business made it 4 years, but not to the 5 year mark. Why did it fail? What was happening? And then how do I take that and learn something from it? Because I knew I was meant to be an entrepreneur. Like that was never really a doubt in my mind. And it's like, okay, then what are we going to do next and how we're going to be successful? So when I started my second business, it was like, okay, well, we're not joining the business failure club. Again, one membership badge is enough for anybody to ever have. That club does not need any more members. It's full of members. It really should go on a wait list and stop accepting people. But I looked at my second business and I was like, okay, we got to figure this out differently. And that business development piece, that sales piece, the sometimes you hear people refer to it as the filling of your prospecting pipeline or your funnel or traffic. And basically, it's enough humans to talk to so that some of them will say yes to being a paying client. And that was the piece that I needed to figure out differently. It was like the big gaping hole with the first business, whereas it's not that I didn't land big name clients like BDO and Ally Bank and some other big name clients for my first business that was a consulting firm. It was consistency. of being able to have ongoing work with ongoing clients or new clients filling that pipeline. And I realized how I generated all my business. I was networking like all the time. And there's nothing fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with networking. Like it's a great strategy. And I think you should be more strategic about it than spray and pray, which I think a lot of people do with their networking. But it really was how I grew my first business. But, fast forward, second business, I'm a mom of 3. Like, I don't want to eat rubber chicken dinners at night. Like that's not, I want to be on the ball field or I want to be picking up, from theater practice. And so I need a different model. And then COVID hit. So like that just, if you didn't have a different model by then, you probably do now. But for me, it was like, I've got to generate clients in a different way. And referrals is the best way. So let's get some of those. I remember literally saying, okay, let's get some of those. Let's get some referrals. And like everybody else, I was like, great. How do I do that? I went to Google because does Google ever really lie? Right. I mean,
Right.
I'm kidding, of course, but like, it's like one of those things. It's like, okay, somebody tell me how to get referrals. And I was at a company that was teaching just sales. And so I saw how that company was teaching referrals. This was like in between my corporate job before I started my second business. I was watching how it's being taught. I was reading articles online and I was like, oh no, I don't want to do any of it. I don't want to do it in any of the ways that they're telling me I have to do it. Can't I do it different? And I sometimes like a challenge. And so I started paying attention to referrals and what really makes them tick and the science behind them and reverse engineering what's going on, and then created my own strategy specifically for my coaching business because I needed to be successful my second time around. And when I had really great success my first year as a coach and I got 112 referrals that I didn't ask for in that first year, that kind of changed everything because then my clients were like, just teach me your referrals. And so that's what I started doing. And we've been doing this now almost 10 years, which is awesome. And it's just it's just a different way. Well, there's a lot of people teaching referrals a lot of different ways, and I'm just very different from them all. And it's either going to work for you because it's what you're looking for, or maybe one of the other traditional approaches will work. But referrals should definitely be a part of your sales strategy.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And as you and I talked about, a few months ago when we first met, my audience is primarily consists of health professionals in private practice, right? So there's a lot of referring going on. And I would say it comes from multiple different places. There's peer-to-peer referrals. There's, physician referrals. There's also patient-to-patient referrals, right? And I'm sure it's probably the tip of the iceberg. But if I were to try to categorize them in a few different buckets, that's what I would come up with. So this will be such a great topic for everyone. So why don't we dig in and start by talking about what exactly is a referral? What is a referral? What's not a referral?
Yes, certainly. And I can't believe I didn't say this at the very beginning, but actually how we connected was because I was referred to you by one of your clients, who's also one of my clients, Eileen. I think she may be watching.
Yes.
So a little shout out to
Eileen says hi.
Yeah, she's the reason why we get to have this conversation because she referred me to you. So it works.
Which is amazing. And Eileen she's an amazing little networker.
Yes.
For sure. Yeah.
Yes.
And she loves to she's really good at she's like one of those connector kinds of people, right?
Yes.
That I believe you write about.
Yeah, you know what she's actually really good at too? Like when she wants to do something and she finds the person or the strategy or the book or the whatever that's going to teach her how to do it, she follows through. Like that is actually sometimes makes people a unicorn. But people always like, why isn't someone successful when they work with you? And I'm like, well, usually because they don't do the work. Like you got to do the work. And Eileen is great at doing the work. And
she
of course now reaping the benefits. So I'm very, very fortunate.
So Eileen, you're a little rock star.
Yes, yes, she is.
She's our star pupil, right?
Yeah, for both of us. That's right.
She is. Yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
So all right, I love this first question from a perspective of digging into referrals and what it's all about, and the question being what it is, because we all think we know, like we all think we have our opinion or our definition. that, and usually we've cobbled it together through just experience mostly of really thinking about what a referral is. But everything I do comes from reverse engineering how something works and looking at the science behind it. So when you look at a referral and people, when I ask the question, why do you want referrals, right? You know this, people are like, oh, because that client shows up and they're like ready to hire you. They already trust you. They're less price sensitive, right? They're usually quicker and easier to close. They know they have a problem and they are looking for someone to solve it. You're not talking them into believing they have a problem. Like when people think about somebody being referred to you, it's because they show up like almost ready to go with the trust that you need for them to decide to pick you. And then, of course, everything else is just usually easier and quicker. Okay. So
much shorter sales cycle. Sure.
Yes.
Like it just shrinks exponentially, right?
Right.
And that really is the beauty.
It is. And it really is why we want prospects to come to us that are referred, right? There's nothing wrong with the prospect you meet at a networking event or the prospect who happens to click on your Facebook ad. All strategies that are working are good strategies. But when we think about referrals, ultimately what we want is that prospect's going to show up and everything's going to move faster typically, and they're going to be less price sensitive, which is really important if you're in a business where people charge things all over the range, right? And so they understand you're valuable because somebody's already determined for them that you're valuable and that they should trust you. So if all those things are true, when a referred prospect shows up, the most important thing that means is how we use that to define a referral, which means for a referral to be a referral, there's got to be two things. Number one, there has to be a personal connection. So there needs to be that personal connection, right? Of Eileen saying, oh my gosh, right? You've got to talk to Stacey. She's amazing. Like talking to like somebody else, right? You've got to talk to Stacey. She's amazing. She can solve your referral issues. That trust is transferred when Eileen then connects that person to me.
Right.
And that connection has to happen. Now, here's the thing. Lots of people think if someone says to them, oh, well, I was actually talking about you the other day to an old friend of mine, and I told them they should totally call you and they should hire you. And I even gave them your contact information. I'm sure they'll follow up. And you're sitting here like you're fiddling your thumbs going, great. Who is this person? And when will they call? When will they drop into my funnel so that I can do amazing, wonderful things for them like I did for you? And you're left waiting because a lot of people think someone telling you that they told someone about you is the same thing as a referral. And it's not, it's word of mouth buzz.
It's not.
Right.
It's not the same.
First thing is that personal connection. The second thing you've got to have is actually the prospect has to have a need identified. So you need to be connected to the prospect by the referral source, which is just what we call the people who, refer you. And then at the same time, they're not only connected, but that prospect knows they are the prospect. They have ultimately been connected because they have a problem that needs to be solved and they need you to do it. And so when somebody shows up and says, yes, I actually need to probably get control of the wellness piece and the health piece in my life, they're invested in your solution. So they're connected to you. Now they trust you. Now they find you valuable. And they're like, and I got a problem to solve. And I think you're the person to help me solve it. So the definition of a referral is driven by the actual why we want referrals. And that is personal connection and need identified.
Okay. That makes a ton of sense. Okay. So what would you say, what are those 4 different types of referral sources?
So we kind of break them down into 4 categories. And I think within the space that you're in, we can take those categories that I typically use as broad kind of categories and break them down a little bit more for the purpose of your students and your audience. But we do this exercise. So if you had a piece of paper in front of you, I would say, okay, draw a line on your piece of paper and put number 1 and 2 above the line and 3 and 4 below the line. Now, it's different with every industry, so we'll talk through this. But what I talk about this is above the line, below the line. There are 2 types of referral sources above the line, and those are the 2 we typically will build our strategies for to be able to generate more referrals. Then there's the 2 below the line, and those are 2 that we love, and we're super thankful when they refer us, but we're not going to spend time and energy and resources and capacity on trying to create strategies to get those bottom 2 groups below the line to actually refer to us. So let me walk through where everybody
Okay.
fits, and then we can talk about strategies behind that. So number one, this isn't the 1 and 2 aren't necessarily in particular order based on industry, but typically we say number 1, clients, right? That makes perfect sense, right? And so your clients can refer you other clients, or your patients, right, can refer you other patients. And that is typically a great way to get referrals based on the business that you're in, right? From that perspective. And then the second category is what we call centers of influence. So the way we define a center of influence is that is somebody who absolutely knows what you do, but they don't do what you do. So there's no competitive overlap. And of
Okay.
course, they come across your ideal client with some level of regularity, right?
Right.
So, which means, let's just say for sake of argument, you had 100 people in your network. I mean, I know we both have thousands, but we're going to use simple math because I don't like doing public math because I'll make mistakes and be embarrassed. So simple math, you've got 100 people in your network. You do not have 100 centers of influence. There's a smaller subset of that truly knows what you do and comes across who could actually hire you to be able to refer people to you. Sometimes they're not in your network. You've got to go find them. You've got to go cultivate them and pull them into. But a center of influence as a referral source is technically someone who can refer you, but isn't your client, right? But they actually have opportunities to refer you. So that's our
Right.
2 groups above
That's my
the line.
favorite. That one is my favorite in terms of this kind of business building.
Yes.
Which is really super powerful, because if you can get in front of their audience, you've got a lot of possibilities. And of course, the referral process, right?
Right.
But even if you can get in front of their audience, it can be incredible.
And if you break it down from your perspective, right, with how you teach, it's like if you break centers of influence down the way I've defined it, my guess is you probably have subcategories, right? You probably have like strategic partnerships or strategic alliances that are within that. You probably have, I think you listed a couple of them in the very beginning as we were getting started as other ways of, like you said, I think practitioner to practitioner, right? So
Yeah.
you've got, right? I see that a lot in the attorney space and the legal space. Attorneys are great referral sources for other attorneys. Not everybody has that. So, so under COI, I think from the perspective of how your audience looks at this, there is probably some subcategories of how you would define who makes up those COIs. But ultimately, it's people who come across your ideal client, and so they're somewhat connected to your world, or they're just super connected themselves.
Right.
And that they have the potential to refer you.
Right. I think it would be like in our world, I mean, it could be people that perhaps they serve the same type of audience, right? They serve the same type of client, albeit in a different way, right?
Yes.
That's usually how I describe it. And the really powerful ones, or the powerful opportunities, are the ones that also come with a nice size audience, right? A built-in audience. So those are, they just tend to have more people in their, I guess, center of influence, or in their world, right?
Yes.
So,
and when we look at groups like that, right, it's a matter of the identification process. Actually, regardless whether you have referral sources, people referring you right now, or you want to develop them, the first step we always do with either of those is the identification. So most people don't think about, well, who is also working with other people in like industries, but doesn't compete with me, that could naturally refer people to me. So when I started my second business, I think I mentioned it was a coaching practice, but specifically it was a productivity and business coaching practice. Who I referred a lot to with my clients, because I coach small business owners, was bookkeepers and CPAs. Because I didn't want to talk about money. Like we talked about money and business development. Right. I didn't want to talk about budgets and line items and QuickBooks, right? So I was always referring. It's like, so business coaches make a great, have that ability to refer to bookkeepers and CPAs. Who refer to me, which surprising, most people wouldn't think this, is actually financial advisors. Because a financial advisor who is also, helping a business owner with managing their money wants that business owner to be successful. So they may suggest a business coach. And so that was a great referral source, center of influence referral source group for me. So it's sometimes we have to just spend a little bit of time thinking about who's already talking to my people, and what I solve may come up. so that they have that potential to refer me. Sometimes it's really obvious. It's like really obvious for mortgage brokers and loan officers, right? And lenders. They're like, I need to talk to real estate agents. Most of us have to kind of do a little digging to figure out who are the best right people to refer us. But those are...
I think it's super powerful. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump over you. I think there's a little delay. But nonetheless, like I like to have my clients and my students look within their community as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because it's really interesting how if you just like think about where else does your ideal client, where do they go? Right? What kind of services do they seek? Do they, they all like probably get their hair cut, right? They probably all get, like maybe get massages, maybe get acupuncture, right? Things like that. And that can be really helpful to try to nail down. And obviously, those people are serving your client, albeit in a different way.
And they need to be the type of people that are actually going to have a conversation.
Yes.
About like, so if I'm having a conversation with someone and they want to refer me to a real estate agent, well, if I'm living in my forever home, what does it matter? I don't need to talk to a real estate agent. Like, I don't care how bad you want to refer one. I don't need to talk to one. So it also needs to be people who are actually going to have conversations or going to have, this type of relationships with people to refer you. But at the end of the day, what most people find out when they start generating referrals is that, oh my gosh, this is so much easier and this is so much better. And typically, not always, but typically the quality of the client is also going to be better when they're referred to you. But that doesn't mean it doesn't take work to kind of set it up correctly in the beginning. And that's important. And so those two, the clients and centers of influence, they're above the line because that's who we build strategies around, whether we have them referring us or we want them referring us, right? Those are two totally different strategies. If someone's referring you now, they're an existing referral source, whether they're a client or a COI, to get more referrals from them, totally different strategy. Then, hey, I've got some clients that I wish would refer me, or I've got some centers of influence that I really wish would refer me. How do I get them to do it? And that is the potential referral source or soon to be referral source strategy. And that's taught differently, right? Because at the end of the day, looks different. And so that's why I always tell folks, knowing who's going to refer you is really important because you need to know what strategies you need to deploy. Because the people I would say technically that I compete against, right, in terms of teaching referrals by asking people or incentivizing or compensating people, giving kickbacks or networking to know a ton of people so that you're always being seen, they're using a very general approach. And I'm like, you have to look at this totally different because the relationships are totally different when someone's referring you or not referring you. Now, I did mention that there were two groups below the line, so I don't want to ignore them because they are important. We just don't build strategies around them. And when I say strategies, I mean we put time and energy and maybe some dollars into it. The two below the line is first family and friends. And the reason for that is typically your family and your friends, if they can refer to you, they will. They just don't need to have a better or deeper or different relationship with you to do that. And the strategies we deploy for our clients and our COIs that refer to us, like we're going to build a certain type of relationship and use a certain type of language. Like that's kind of like the crux of my system. And so you just don't need to do that with family and friends. So like, for instance, my husband, every once in a while will come across somebody that he can refer to me. He's married to me, probably going to refer me. Right. No matter what. I mean, I would hope so. Right. And so from that perspective, as you look at it in that way, I just don't need to build a strategy around family and friends.
It's kind of on autopilot.
It is. Now, that doesn't mean you may not have. Now, if you have a family member or like let's just say you have a cousin who also could fit into the COI category, well, then it's your list. You get to pull anybody above the line and label them however you want so that it works for your business, right? So definitely just because I draw a line and I'm like, these two are above, these two are below, that doesn't mean your cousin, who is also somebody who could refer as a massage therapist and sends you tons of clients, certainly pull that cousin up and make them a center of influence because of the quality or the volume of the referrals they're sending. But more than likely, your cousins, you're going to see each other at Thanksgiving or Hanukkah or Christmas or whatever, right? And they're going to refer you. And then the fourth group is actually a little bit of a conundrum, but it's actually strangers. The fourth
Okay.
group that will refer you is strangers. Now, when you are brand new in business, there aren't any strangers that are going to be referring to you, because when a stranger is willing to refer to you, they have typically, you have a long-standing reputation. So like you've just been around doing this forever and they've heard your name, or they know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody that had a great experience with you and your name just stuck with them for whatever reason, or they've seen you like written about in articles, or they follow your social media because they just think your Instagram reels are super funny and they just know, they know you. And when somebody, it is random though, which is why we don't build a strategy around it. When somebody says, hey, I really could use some help in my health, right? And they're like, oh, I've never worked with him, I've never worked with her, but I think they're amazing and you should check them out. So whereas it's still a referral, you typically don't know who that person is that's referring that person to you. But a pro tip here is anytime somebody refers someone to you and you don't know who the referral source is, they're technically a stranger in the fourth category. I want you to go get to know them, whether that is sending them a thank you note, scheduling a Zoom coffee if they're not local, grabbing coffee if you can, if you're not doing the in-person thing, whatever. But they just referred you and they're a stranger to you. You're not a stranger to them, but they're a stranger to you. So definitely get to know them and move them up above the line and label them as a COI if you can continue to cultivate that relationship. What I have found though is family and friends and strangers are usually, not always, not that cousin who refers you all the people because they're a massage therapist, but usually family and friends and strangers are what we call one-hit wonders. It's like one great referral, maybe two, and then there's really nothing else that they have for you because they don't come across your idle client all that often. They just got lucky when they did that one time.
Okay. So I got a question for you. So what about, okay, so a lot of our practitioners, including dietitians today, they do quite often get referrals from a physician that they don't know. They've never met. The doctor sees lots and lots of patients, and those patients are probably within the target market of that registered dietitian, right? So one of the things that I always say is really keep track of who's referring you. And if you don't know, even if you know the doctor, whoever it is, right? But let's in this example say it was a physician. I always say, gosh, there's probably more where that came from. So let's, start to develop a relationship with that person. So would that be a bottom line or top line?
Definitely top line. So I think physicians, for your audience, physicians fall under the subcategory of COIs. They are definitely, because that physician, like you said, there's a lot more patients.
Even if they don't know each other, even if like there's no relationship.
They start off as a stranger referring you, but we're going to pull them up above the line. We're going to put them as a COI, right? We're going to track. I love that you use that word because it's like my favorite thing to do. And most people are like, tracking data is so unsexy, right? And you're like, so it tells you everything you need to know about life, about your business. And so, yes, then you would, so technically it comes in as a stranger, but because we've recognized, whoa, this is a doctor who could refer me a lot more, we're going to pull them above the line. They're going to be categorized as a physician that is a center of influence that is referring to us. And you are hit the nail on the head. Absolutely right. We want to then cultivate a relationship with them to generate more referrals.
Okay. Yeah. Because I always think, gosh, like that to me is low-hanging fruit, right? That is such a great place to start, because you've got something in common with that person as well. Not only did they refer to you, but you share a patient, right? So you've got that common link, and it makes it easy to reach out.
I've had a number of folks, like Eileen's being one of them. I have a number of folks in this world, dietitian, wellness, health coach, that kind of stuff. And that's like the dream, right? To have a doctor they don't know refer them. They're like, that's amazing. Because most of the time, the hardest thing they try to do is to get into doctors' offices. And they're like, gatekeepers, like, heck,
it's really hard.
Right? Yeah. Like same thing. I'm assuming, I don't know. I don't coach pharmaceutical reps. I'm assuming it's probably the same thing for them, right? They want to get in, and it's like the gatekeeper is like, the big wall. And so, yes, if it happens, that's huge. And you should definitely not waste that opportunity. Because the reality of it is, I would make a guess. My thought process here is because I have had people say, well, how do I get into doctor's offices? And I'm like, it's like anything else. It takes a lot of trial and error from the perspective of getting in the door. And I don't teach those strategies necessarily in that way. I bet you do, though, if I had to guess.
And I
But
used to be in pharma. So
you get it.
so
So
I've
you
got,
know it. But here's what I always tell folks. If you go back to that doctor that referred you and you ask that doctor, how did you learn about me to have me be the dietitian that you referred to? I mean, I'm going to make up a statistic here, but I'm pretty confident in my number. 95% of the time, that doctor will say, one of my patients recommended you. One of my patients, because the doctors don't know. Right. And they like, sometimes I look at my doctor and I'm like, I just want to know what multivitamin you were taking. Like, I know you tell me to take a multivitamin, just tell me the one you're taking. And they're very hesitant, right, to always share that particular of information. It obviously has a lot to do with what they do. And so there's a ton of dietitians, there's a ton of health coaches, there's a ton of weight coaches. Like there's a lot, right? Because it's a needed necessity in our world. But when you're trying to get someone like a doctor to recommend you, they usually are more confident and comfortable recommending because they can say, well, I have another patient who's used this person and has actually had great success. So I think it is valuable in figuring that part out of the where'd you hear about me kind of journey. I think is really, really important because it also helps solidify that relationship you're going to have with the doctor as well.
Absolutely. So, all right. So where would you say, do you have any more comments or insight in terms of where exactly the referrals fit into the overall overarching sales strategy?
Yeah, definitely. So most people teach sales as it's a two-legged stool, right? And it's very generalized in that regards. It's like you've got your prospecting activities and you have your marketing activities. And what I teach is that actually referrals don't fit within prospecting. That's where the asking, compensating, networking a ton advice comes from for referrals when you try to put referrals in prospecting. And then they don't fit in marketing either. That's where you get those promotional and gimmicky things like put in your email signature, the greatest compliment you can give me as a referral. Like most people don't recognize how gimmicky and promotional that is and how it comes across to the people receiving their emails. And so most people teach referrals fit in prospecting or marketing. What I have found in my decade of almost doing this is that it's actually completely a third leg to your stool. So you have your prospecting activities. That's great. You have your marketing activities. That's great. And then you have your referral activities. And those look a little bit different from that perspective, right? And when you're thinking about it in that way. So we have that understanding behind prospecting stuff we do. And that may be your networking, or maybe you have ads that you run, or whatever that is. And then you've got your marketing, right? And so maybe your marketing is you've got your website, and maybe you do social media or content marketing. And then you have your strategies that are specific for referrals and for generating referrals in that way as well.
Okay, that makes sense.
And if you want, I can go back and answer Tammy's question. I know that she
great.
She posted it. I would love to, and it's kind of fits into kind of what we're talking about.
Perfect.
So Tammy asked, she's in a BNI. And so a lot of people join BNIs or other groups like that are for lead generation. And they go and you meet, and BNI's, a little bit time intensive. Usually it's a weekly meeting you go to, and you're with a group of people. And the idea is that you're supposed to be like lead sharing, or I don't call it referral sharing. I call it lead sharing, because you don't always know if the person you're being told to call actually needs you. In some ways that it happens, it doesn't always look like a referral. But she's been told that it can take about a year before referrals will start happening. And that's not going to help her, as she says, make money right now to grow her business, which I completely respect. So she's starting to wonder if it's worth it, right? Or is there a better way to develop a referral network? And so, Tammy, I think the thing for you to understand, the most important thing about doing any referral strategy, right? Whether it's joining a group like BNI or any of the other groups that are out there. And there's lots of them, right? Or also looking at cultivating your own list of referral sources in your own way. Unfortunately, referrals really is the long-term game. It is your ability to not necessarily, right, get like 30 referrals next month because of one thing that you do, but to know that consistently every year you'll increase the number of referrals that you're receiving year over year. But what I would say when you're thinking about joining a group like BNI and you're wondering is the power of those groups are actually in the one-on-ones. They're actually in the opportunity for you to spend a little face-to-face time with the members individually so you can build that trust factor and you can get a sense who actually is going to come across somebody who's willing to talk about, hey, I need a health coach, right? I don't know what Tammy does. I'm just going to say, right, hey, I need a dietitian. Hey, I need a health coach. Or I know people who do. So when you're in groups like that, right, it's really important for you to figure out what's let's not leave any stone unturned. How do I get FaceTime? How do I get one-on-one time with everybody in that group? Understand what they do. And Eileen can talk about this because she's going through it right now with my program. The understanding is when you're trying to get someone to refer you who's never referred you before, there's not one easy button. You just push and then it just happens. Some people are of course more likely to refer you because of what they do, like the physician, right? Or the massage therapist who needs to refer to you. But a lot of times it's going to start with you taking care of them and building up that relationship and that reciprocity. And then the way I teach it, because I don't ever want you to take advantage of that reciprocity or that relationship, is the way we plant referral seeds within that. So it's like subconsciously they're thinking about you in referrals, but ultimately you're just taking care of them. But that takes time. So Tammy, my recommendation for people who are like, hey, I need to make some money this month or next month, right? There are other prospecting and marketing activities you probably can do. I'm thinking our host probably has lots of those ideas, but referrals are not like hey, I want to get hit right now. Now, do people go into my programs and implement my strategies and get like a whole bunch of referrals in the first 45 days or the first 60 days? Yes. It's just nothing I'm going to guarantee because everybody starts from a different place of what that quick hit will ultimately look like. So the newer you are in business, sometimes the referral journey takes a little longer. But here's the thing. If you start now, you have a better chance of having referrals happen in 6 months to 9 months versus you waiting a year or two and then deciding to get started with referrals. So Tammy may not have been 100% the answer you were wanting to hear because I don't have an easy button for you, but I do know the time and commitment you put in is only going to be as valuable as the relationships you build with any of those type of groups that you're in.
Yeah, it's a longer term solution. I think that's what you're saying. It can be quick, but not always. Just like at really any strategy, right? You definitely have to be there for the long haul. So yeah, I'm going to put a question here that I think is interesting as well. So this person says that they're part of LayTip, and it's very similar to BNI. And he or she had a really big outcome from that resource the year prior, but now it kind of has dried up. And I was curious about that because recently I've been hearing, like, even with physicians, like, what do you do if, like, I got tons of referrals, last year, but now I'm getting nothing? Like, what do you do? And, just do you have any strategies around that?
Yeah, it's really
Hey, Dorothy, this is Dorothy.
Okay, so this is Dorothy's question?
Dorothy,
okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, and I think it's like the conundrum that everybody's like, let's solve this problem because, It's interesting. I have a lot of people who join my programs and they will say, I get referrals. Like, it's great. But in the back of my head, I have this little tiny fear, this little voice that says, what if it stops? What if it ends?
Because it is risky.
Yes, because I don't have processes and systems around it to be able to continuously cultivate those relationships for referrals. And so a lot of people who join my program, they're like, hey, I'm getting 30, 40, 50 referrals a year. I just need to make sure it continues. And if it grows and increases, great. So some people literally come into because they know they need the strategy to keep the consistency. Other people come into my program because they're like, I'm getting 5 referrals a year and I need 25 or I need 45 or whatever it is, right? And so they need to put the processes and systems into place. So this is like a typical scenario when, and Dorothy, if you're able to type in an answer to this, I'd love to know when you joined LayTip. So if you can put in like when you actually joined LayTip, and then were you in there a couple of years, and then last year was a huge year, and then not so much maybe this year, or maybe it was you just joined last year. Not that answer necessarily means that it's different about what I'm going to say, but I had a couple of different perspectives of probably why that happened. But while we're waiting on her to answer, what I would say is when something's working, it's always important we kind of go back and try to figure out why. If Dorothy was new to LayTip, right, she was building these new relationships, people were paying attention to her, she was a fresh face, right? They're usually when we're a newer. Okay, so she joined in March of 2020. Oh, and then she credits you for some of that success.
All right. Thank you, Dorothy.
Which is awesome. Yes.
Dorothy's awesome.
So here's the thing. This isn't surprising to me. She joined in March of 2020. Let's just be honest. That's a really interesting time to do anything, and from a historical perspective. But she joined in March of 2020, and my guess is that she leaned in to those relationships. And I am not as familiar with LayTip, but I do know it's like BNI. And so whatever it was, she was leaning in and she was meeting people, and it was new. So she was more involved and more engaged. And doing that through 2020 provided results for her in 2021. And what typically happens, Dorothy, I am not saying this is you, but what typically happens is when something starts working, we pull back a little because it's working and all the things, and we don't pay attention to, well, what am I doing exactly that was making that work? And so what I would recommend, Dorothy, is you go back and look, all those referrals you received in 2021, who from LayTip did they come from? My guess is there's a smaller group of people they came from. And then if you looked back into like the last time you really had some like meaningful relationship kind of outreach with them, you may have just kind of stopped, and you may have gone months and months and months without communicating versus not. It could also be that you tried something you'd never done in 2021, right? And then that was just, it can only be done once, and then you got results from it, but you can't really duplicate it. It all depends on what you're doing. But I always tell folks, go back and look, like get an idea, get a sense of what you were doing and what was happening, but who did those referrals come from? That is huge to recognize. Okay, how do I keep that going? Because usually people stop referring us because we've forgotten about them, not the other way around. Now, if she says the clients that she got from LayTip are still your clients, okay, but you haven't had any new ones. Yeah. And so I think the question is, right, is if those people are there to refer you, are they still in the group? Are they still referring you? Who's referring those clients to you? Now, if you mean you're getting clients that are LayTip members, well, that's not a referral. If you're in a networking group and then the networking group members become your clients, that means your networking was working. And the networking is the source. LayTip is the source of those clients. If there's someone or people in LayTip that are referring you, then those people are the referral source. They're the source of those new clients. So I think that's just one of the ways we got to kind of keep it straight as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting how that works, right? Sometimes you know, something's new, you go all in, and then it's working. And here's what I think happens sometimes is we're just so busy serving clients, right? You get really busy serving clients, and it's just kind of like the whole out of sight, out of mind concept just kind of slips away a little bit sometimes. Not always, but sometimes.
And you know, I love that you said that, because the truth is, I think what people don't understand about referral generation is when I teach somebody my strategies, you know, you should not be doing something daily, weekly, or even monthly to generate referrals. Because when you do something too often, it loses that surprise and delight factor, and it becomes almost expected. And then you go looking for the easiest way to do that thing on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. When I teach people how to build a referral plan that's going to have what we call touch points, but they're like basically outreaches to the people who are referring you now. So you identify them, and then you're going to build out a plan. It's like 4 to 8 touch points in a year. And most people fall in 5, 6, or 7, which means you're not doing something every month. You're definitely not doubling up and doing something like 2 or 3 times every month. So it's really important that the strategy you're implementing is something that you can manage, because consistency is key. And so if you're in something and you're like, it's a ton of work, but you're getting a ton of clients, and then you stop doing the work because you're busy with your clients, right? It's not gonna keep producing. Your referral strategy, you can't do that to your referral strategy. But the good news is your referral strategy doesn't need anything from you on a, daily or weekly or monthly basis. What it does need, of course, is you having a plan in place. And when it's September and you're supposed to do XYZ for your referral sources, you do it because you don't have anything in October. And so the importance of that consistency. People overlook, I think, what really matters to referral sources. And that surprise and delight factor and that gratitude and thankfulness is such a huge driving piece to keep referring you. There's some other things to it when we think about it from a science perspective and a language perspective. But yeah, it's definitely like, if the concern people have is, that's me, right? Like, you kind of just called them out. You're like, I do it, and then I get all the clients, and then I stop doing the thing that was working. The referral strategy is built so that that shouldn't happen, but you still have to execute on it as well.
It's interesting that, so for each person in your bucket, right? Your referral bucket that you're cultivating over time. So basically you're saying, do something, have a strategy where you're, connecting with them in some way to move the relationship forward about, did I hear you say 4 or 5 times a year?
Usually 5 to 7 is where
people 5 to 7. Okay.
I love that you said this, because what I want to clarify is this is not individual. So this isn't me and you 5 times a year, me doing something for you and then doing it for Eileen and then doing it for Dorothy. And Eileen knows this because she's actually putting her plan together right now. She's creating memorable and meaningful top of mind touch points for her group of referral sources. I don't remember off the top of my head how many she has for her referral sources. But the way I teach it, there's a 4-part framework of how I teach what's going to impact your referral sources. The one thing you do actually will impact your referral sources. So it's like doing it in mass, but yet when they receive it, what we do feels highly personalized. And this isn't gifts. Like, some people are like, oh gosh, now I got to go buy 6 gifts for somebody throughout the year. You can't do the same thing for every touch point. You can't do 6 coffees. You can't do 6 gifts, right? You can't send 6 thank you cards. Like, you have to do a variety of the touch points you're going to do. But what you do, we do for everybody, minus the one-on-one time, because that is actually important at least once or twice a year for most people.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah. So like, what I always tell folks is, this is my favorite example because I think everybody can be like, I got it. Like, you can just visualize it. So one of the things I always tell people is, when you look at who's been referring you, they're going to have commonalities. So way back, I'm going to use an example from way back in the day. It's still one of my favorites, and I try to get any of my clients to do it that will. But way back in the day, when I was a business and productivity coach, I looked at who was referring me. Now, I worked with business owners. My preference was business owners who were also parents, because that was my life. And so I had business owners who were parents. Well, I have a lot of clients that referred me. So a lot of my referral sources were parents. So a touch point in my 12-month plan, one of my touch points in my 12-month plan was to do Mother's Day and Father's Day touch points. And so, do you have to go spend money? No, but I am going to talk about a gift that I did do, because I think you can visualize it quicker in your mind's eye versus anything else. So for Mother's Day, I sent all of my top referral sources a $9 Wonder Woman water bottle. So if you have 10 top referral sources, right, we're talking about less than $100, so you do need to get them to them and ship them, right?
Okay.
But if you're looking at it from that perspective, they got this Wonder Woman water bottle, and they got a card that said something to the effect of, hey, never forget you're a hero. Happy Mother's Day, right? And then there's some other language in there as well. Do you think they ever forgot who gave them their Wonder Woman water bottle? No.
Yeah,
like
no.
I would get pictures on, through text message from my referral sources. It would show up on social media. My daughter took my water bottle. Stacey, I'm going to need a new one, and they were appreciative that I saw them. Hey, you're a parent, and I didn't forget it. And I'm recognizing on a Mother's Day. And do you really expect to hear from your business coach, who you also refer to on Mother's Day? Right? I didn't do this for every client. I did it for the people who were referring me, who were also parents. And so it's one idea, right? But I can't send a Wonder Woman water bottle for every Mother's Day. And I certainly can't send a Wonder Woman water bottle for Labor Day, right? Like, it doesn't fit. I mean,
it doesn't align.
Right. Maybe technically Labor Day would fit, right? But from that perspective, like, it fit for that moment in time. And so from that perspective, right? That's something that you do that's memorable and meaningful. And it fits into your budget, your shoestring budget, or whatever your budget looks like, or you don't. But at the end of the day, what you do for your referral sources matters to who they are. So most people are like, what should I do for my referral sources? And I'm always like, that's not the right first question. It's the wrong first question. The right first question is, who are my referral sources? What do they have in common? Then what can I do that they would appreciate, that I can share my gratitude through, and do that about 5, 6, maybe 7 times a year. But what makes all of that work is that at the end of the day, I use the right language, right? And that language ultimately matters, of them thinking about referring you without you ever saying to refer you. That's the kind of like the secret sauce of my process. But again, do you need to send a Wonder Woman water bottle? Do you need to send a gift? Not at all. But you have to do a variety of touch points. Again, nobody needs 6 gifts in a row from you. Actually, that's probably quite stalkerish. And nobody has time to meet you 6 times a year, probably, for coffee. Right. So there's got to be a variety of things that you do.
Okay. So, all right. So let me just run this by you in your example. Okay. So it's obviously you're focused on Wonder Woman, female, business owners, right? With kids.
Yes.
So what do you do with like the guys?
Yeah.
Like in that same moment in time when you're doing, your process,
right?
What do you do with the guys? Just curious, like the people that don't fit perfectly into that box.
Most of the time we want our touch points to be able to go out to what gender's not relevant. Locations, it's doesn't matter about gender, doesn't matter about age, doesn't matter about location. This is the touch point. When you do something like a Mother's Day, technically that means you have 3 touch points. So if you do Mother's Day, it's going to be for those that are mothers. If you do then you would follow up with that in that same touch point. Number 2 is Mother's Day, Father's Day, and then those referral sources who don't have children, right? I always said you do something around summertime, because Mother's Day is May and Father's Day is June. Yeah. And it kind of hits the summertime theme. So that one, a lot of people don't do Mother's Day and Father's Day because it's technically 3 touch points. It's not one I recommend someone attempt to tackle if they're not, if they don't want to tackle that. But for Father's Day, I asked my husband, I was like, hey, I did these Wonder Woman water bottles. What about a Superman water bottle? And he was like, no grown man is going to drink out of a Superman water bottle.
Right.
And I was like, okay. And I was like, I'm going to send a Yeti. And he was like, golden, that's perfect. Send your Yeti. And it was great. Right. But can you send a Yeti for Father's Day the next year? No, because actually most of us have too many Yetis, right? Like at the end of the day. And so you have to look at doing something different. So, but again, this was a gift. And that would mean my next couple of touch points won't have usually anything to do with a gift. But some of this has to do with where your referral sources are located. I work with business owners in 11 different countries all around the world. People who refer to me, sometimes I've never met in person. I know them. I have relation. They're podcast host, right? They are my client who happens to be a real estate agent in Singapore, right? So like, I'm never going to see them. So I may do things that are more like mail based then, because I can't meet them for coffee, right? At the local coffee shop and have a cup of coffee and like talk to them. And so we talk about in our program, like the different strategies you deploy based on who your list is, but all of that is indicative on who's on your list.
Got it.
And that's a major piece.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so all right. Hopefully that makes sense to all you as well. I think it's super interesting, that approach. Let's take a quick look at the comments. And Lesli knows I've had amazing positive feedback from networking to doctors in DC. And they say, it's so good to hear from a dietitian. Where are you guys? We welcome you to come into our office. We get tired of the sales reps. Yeah. And that is a common theme, and it's important for my audience to remember, because a lot of times it's super scary to reach out, right? It's like, oh no, I don't want to because I might be bothering them. But guys, the reality is you're needed. If another practitioner can find a great referral source, like you're doing that person a huge favor. So I love that example. And it really often is the case. The same with therapists. Okay.
Yeah.
I loved when I had my nutrition practice, I loved not, well, actually, the way I did it, and this might be helpful to some of you, is I started with a couple of therapists that I knew, right? That I knew
Always
fairly
easier.
well, way easier. And I just said, hey, do you happen to know like any of your colleagues that are of similar mind, right? That might appreciate X, Y, and Z. And then she emailed her colleagues and said, oh my gosh, you have to meet Lesli, blah, blah, blah. And that worked out great. So it does make it a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think the point
Yeah.
that Dorothy made too about that comment you just highlighted is that actually came, and it was exactly what I said. There was a doctor. The doctor who said that was because she was invited into the office by one of her clients. That doctor was the client's doctor, right? So that's I think
Right.
that's when doctors are like, oh, I got a client who uses you and likes you. I
Yes.
can say that, and and I think sometimes is when you're sitting in your doctor's office, like just be like, hey, if I wanted to talk to more people like you, what should I be doing? Because your doctor has to answer you. They're sitting in front of you, right?
Right.
Like doing your examination. Sometimes I call these like we're just doing intel. We're not expecting that doctor to refer us. We're just doing intel. Like, hey, I would love to have doctors who thought of me when they had a client who had this need. How do I
Yeah.
work in the minds of you guys, right? Of you guys and gals, right? Like, what does that look like? You're doing it to get information
Mhm.
of how you can probably outreach to those offices. Some of it may be direct mail, some of it may be drive-bys and drop-offs and things like that. But more than likely, you'll also find yourself in a position to where they can start connecting you with others who need to have, hey, this is the dietitian I recommend. This is the nutritionist that I recommend, or whatever that it is. Sometimes it starts with the people who have to answer you, which when you're paying them, as your doctor, they should give you some intel and answer your questions,
Absolutely.
while you're
I
sitting there
love
in that cloth
Yeah,
robe,
yeah,
right?
in that very comfortable situation, right? Yeah,
Yes.
when I had my nutrition practice, I started by looking, where do I currently go? Where do I, where do I go in terms of, my physicians? I had a chiropractor at
Right.
the time. I had some neck issues, so I had an acupuncturist, and all these people. I even thought, I spent a lot of money at that hair place down the street. I'm going to go there too because I know they're really involved in the community. And yeah, so I think it's super helpful to do that. And I do remember Dorothy. Dorothy had the most amazing success story. And it was so inspiring. Dorothy, I'm sure, yeah, this is probably rings a bell when your patient, you had that mutual patient with that physician, and the patient did amazing. It was like a miracle that you worked with this particular client of yours. And so that doctor was like thrilled to get your phone call, right? Because he knew what just how amazing it was that you're able to help this particular patient. All
Yep.
right, one more quick oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's actually the one we were just talking about, the one you just highlighted. That was the one
Oh,
we were
right,
just
right.
talking about.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Yeah.
So, and the other thing I would say is one of the things that I always tell folks is that there's two approaches here, right? I think the concept is that there's people that probably have information that you would like for them to share with you regarding, hey, how do I get into a doctor's office? Let me ask my doctor. Like, how do I get into doctor offices? I know this sounds crazy, but what do you guys like? What do you hate? Right? You don't have to follow that up with, and will you refer to me? Right? I don't teach
Right.
that strategy because it
Right.
immediately changes the dynamic of the relationship you have with your doctor
Mhm.
or your massage therapist or your acupuncturist, people you're paying money to.
Right.
What I would teach in that scenario, right? I love how you said it, Lesli, of like, hey, I'm spending money with them and I'm just going to go to them and make sure, like, sometimes it's just making sure they know what you do. Sometimes
Right.
it's you asking them, hey, I would love to have massage therapists refer me. Like, tell me about your practice. Tell me about the conversations you
Yes,
have.
thank
You're
you.
you're there to get information from them. It's like intel
Yes.
gathering, right? It's like,
Oh
tell
my
me
god.
what I need to know. It's like when you're like back in the day when when we used to like interview for jobs, like before we were entrepreneurs, right? And
Yeah.
you'd be like, hey, tell me everything about that boss before I decide to accept the offer. right? It's the same kind of thing. It's like you're gathering intel by somebody who is going to have to answer you because you're probably spending money with them or they know you, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, how do I get into more massage therapist office? How do I get into more acupuncture office? You're not asking them to refer to you.
Right.
They're going to know that without you having to say a word. And you're going to plant that seed because you're asking them, how do I make inroads with folks like you? What would you recommend that I do? I think that is a great conversation starter for people starting out. And they're like, I need a massage therapist or acupuncturist or whomever referring to me. Don't go bull in the china shop in the front door. Go in the side door and say, how do I get in front of people like you? Can you help me? How do I get in front of people like you? What would you recommend if you were in my shoes? They're going to tell you what they think, which will be super valuable. And in addition to that, that you're already going to have planted the seed to refer to you as well without you saying a word. And that means you're going to continue to honor and respect the relationship and not make it awkward by saying, hey, and by the way, refer me everybody you got. Because that does change the dynamic of the relationship instantly because you just made that whole conversation about you when you asked for them to refer you.
Right. That's really true. So yeah, what I often talk about in my conversations with clients is like, you never want to go in and just like go in, hand over your card and just start talking all about yourself and your credentials and like, you know, just don't, because it is just, it's really off-putting to the other person. Instead, just go in with a sense of curiosity, right? What kind of patients are you seeing? What are the patients that are really asking a lot of questions about nutrition or whatever, that are taking a lot of time, right? What, you know, just be inquisitive and curious.
Right.
And I think that is really your best approach, because you would never, it's just kind of a, like, you don't even know the person, right? Like, it would just be kind of awkward to say, here, will you refer to me, when you don't even know anything about the office or what kind of patients they see or where the struggles lie, right?
Yep.
So
And
I really
remember,
recommend.
you're asking them to put their reputation on the line when they refer to you. I mean, that right up there is like, let's make sure they actually know who we are and trust us. And so whereas it worked super fast for Dorothy because she had a client who was like, look at me, I'm a walking miracle. Thanks to Dorothy. And now I'm talking to my doctor about it. And my doctor's like, look at that, I'm keeping a patient, right? Because Dorothy helped him. And of course that doctor's like, now I'm interested. Like now I have someone to have a baseline as to why Dorothy is somebody that I would recommend and think about, right, to others because I have a patient who does it.
Exactly.
And I think that, and you know, my first introduction to this is how doctors think and work is because I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm in the South. And I know this happens everywhere, but it happens a lot in the South. People hold their kids back from starting kindergarten at age 5 and wait until they're age 6. And I was a big believer in when your kid turns 5, they go. Like if they're academically ready, socially ready, they don't have any other learning issues, they should go. So my poor kids, summer babies, like turning 5 and boom, the next week they're in kindergarten. And I was a proponent for it and I had done my research on it and all that kind of stuff. And my doctor, I used to talk to her about that. She used to send her other patients to me, other moms that were struggling with the idea of, should I hold my kid back or should I send them on? And she asked for permission. She's like, can I just give them your name and your email and let them reach out to you if they have questions about not holding their kid back? And I was like, sure. And this was, I mean, the one I'm talking about is, he's 14 now. So as you can imagine, this is like 15 years ago, right? And we started these conversations with my pediatrician, but that's what they're looking for. So yeah, that relationship matters so very much. And they probably do need you more than they'll ever admit.
Yeah, they really do. And it is like they are putting their reputation on the line. So the one thing that that you had mentioned that I completely agree with is when you said, you know, hey, send me all your patients. Oh my gosh, like that's never going to happen.
No.
Don't even ask for it because
that.
it is never going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, you just want to, you don't want to do that. You want to really try identify the need and really try to be realistic in terms of a starting point, right?
Yes.
Because it'll never be, you don't want to go for the whole piece of pie, right? The whole
Right.
big pie. You just want to, if you even get to the point in your relationship where you're talking about specific patient types, which I would encourage you to do, it's just like maybe a couple patients, right? Just to get started, right? It's not like a whole, it just never can be that way because they have to get a sense of your work and your results and really build that trust.
Yep.
So yeah, and thanks. I don't know if this is Dorothy, but I'm glad you like the water bottle. All right, guys, we are way over. Thanks for sticking with me. And time really went by so fast, Stacey. This is amazing. What a great conversation. I have a feeling we could go on and on.
I feel like we just
But
scratched the surface, even though
I
we've
do
talked for
too.
about an hour.
I know. I completely agree. I love this topic. So I know I really would love to. We'll have to do it again. How's that sound?
That sounds amazing.
Problem
I'd love to come
solved.
back.
We'll
Yes,
do
I'd
it
love to come
again.
back. We can do
And
part 2.
yeah, we'll do a part 2, guys. How's that sound? All right. So yeah, thanks, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was awesome. Such great fun. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Hope you have a great day, rest of your day, awesome weekend, and I'll see you next Thursday. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Stacey.
Bye.
Take care.